It was my first Halloween on Hamby Street, and I was raring to go. I just moved into the neighborhood the week before, and I was hoping to meet some of the kids on the street as I filled my bag with treats. Mom hadn't set out to move this close to Halloween, but when your dad decides he needs the house for his mistress and her kids, you have to pick up and go pretty quickly. The court had made him buy Mom out of half the house, but that wasn't too difficult for him. We had found a very nice house on Hamby Street packed with families and little cracker box houses, but unpacking hadn't left me a lot of time to make friends. So now, standing on the front stoop in my homemade ghost costume, I was ready to find some friends. The costume had been last minute. My mom had honestly forgotten about it in the move, and when I had reminded her an hour ago, she had realized there was no time to buy one. So, hunting around, she found some old sheets, got a couple of eye holes, and there we go. Classic ghost costume. It looked kind of lame next to the superheroes and cartoon characters that were tromping up and down the street, but I liked it. It reminded me of Charlie Brown from the storybook that I had on my bookshelf, and as I set out, I wondered if someone might actually give me a rock. I didn't get a rock, but I did get a lot of looks from those around me. I'd expected some laughs, maybe some questions about why I didn't have a real costume, but what I got was something between fear and scorn. People stepped out of my way. The adults looked down at me with disbelief, and a lot of the kids looked scared. I had to look at the front of the sheet a couple of times to make sure that there weren't any stains or something. No one wanted to talk to me. Most of the children turned away from me, and the people of the houses refused to give me candy. They slammed the door in my face almost immediately, some of them telling me that I should be ashamed of myself before doing it. That's how I came to be sitting on the sidewalk, trying not to cry, and wondering why I had bothered to come out at all. I had met no one. I'd made 0 friends, and I felt like I should have just gone home an hour ago. So when the group of other kids in ghost costumes walked down the street, they were pretty easy to spot. There were 5 of them, their ghost costumes looking dirty and ragged, and as they walked like a line of spooky ducklings, the crowd parted for them as well. They didn't stop at any of the houses, they didn't speak to anyone, they just kept making their way up the street like an arrow fired from a bow. I felt drawn to follow them for some reason. To this day, I can't say why. Maybe I felt some kind of kinship, or maybe it was the way people treated them. But regardless, I got up, and I ran to catch them, my shoes slapping the concrete as I went. The other kids watched me go with genuine concern, but I didn't care much. These kids seemed to have made the same mistake I had, and it seemed like it was better to be an outcast as a group than it was to be alone. Hey, wait up! I called, the 5 ghosts utterly ignoring me as we went along. We walked in our now 6 ghost line, and I began attempting to make conversation with them. They looked to be about my age, or at least my height, and they all carried brightly colored candy bags that were in the same sorry shape as their costumes. They were mud-spattered, ripped in places, and the kid in front of me had shoes with a sole coming loose. His left sole slapped at the pavement, going whap, whap, whap. And I wondered what sort of costumes these were. Were they some kind of zombie ghost or something? Next to my clean white sheet, they looked downright grimy, and I wondered why their parents had let them leave the house like this. Where are we going? I finally asked, all of them leaving my neighborhood as we turned a corner and headed into a less crowded street. I promised my mom I wouldn't go too far, and I don't know the streets real well. They ignored me, but I wouldn't have long to wander. I'd seen the house before, Mom and I staring at it as we'd driven into town. It stood out, the grass long, the fence ragged, but the house was the centerpiece of the unkempt space. It's probably once been a very nice one-story house. But it looked like someone had pelted it with eggs or dirt or both. And the owner hadn't bothered to clean it off. The windows were boarded up, the shingles hung raggedly from the roof, and someone had sprayed "Killer" across the garage door in big red letters. It was impossible not to notice, and I realized too late that it was our destination. Are we trick-or-treating there? I don't even think anyone lives there. They didn't say anything, but I realized I was wrong a few minutes later. I could see a light peeking from a crack in one of the boarded-up windows, and as the ghosts arrived on the sidewalk, it was suddenly covered by a shadow. The ghosts did not approach the house. They didn't even come off the sidewalk. They just stood there, bags in hand, and stared at the house. The shadow moved away from the opening a few times, but it always came back in short order. It was a fitful thing, moving away only to come back quicker and quicker to check that ghosts were still there. I kept turning to look at them, asking what we were doing and receiving no answer. The ghost kids just stood and stared, boring into the house with their dark circle eyes. I think that was when I really got a good look at them. Their sheets weren't just grimy, they were covered in muddy tracks. Some of the stains looked like they could be blood, but the worst was the bare stretch of leg beneath the sheets. The skin on those legs, they were cut and bleeding, purple, bruised, and the arms were in a similar state of abuse. The eyes were the worst. Looking out from the open holes were darkened eyes that were purple with rings. The kids looked like they had gone 10 rounds with a professional boxer, and the part that usually had color was pitch black and unblinking. These kids weren't interested in candy. They were out for something else. I had opened my mouth to ask them why they were just standing here when the door suddenly opened and a man in dirty, sweat-stained clothes came weaving out. He wore sweatpants and a tank top, and his bare feet looked like he had bumped them enough times to break every toe on him. He was thin to the point of being skeletal, and the clothes hung off him like rags. I worried at first they might be drunk, weaving and pivoting across the yard, but the closer he got, the more I came to understand that he was stone sober. He wasn't stumbling. He was afraid. And it took everything he had to approach the ghost kids. "What do you want?" he stammered, his foot catching on something in the tall grass. Why do you torment me?" The grass was so tall that you could hear the dry husks scraping across his pants. But if it bothered him, or the 5 other little ghosts, it never showed. "Haven't I suffered enough? The town won't let me forget. My ex-wife won't let me forget. And now you return every Halloween to remind me of my mistakes? Why? Why? Just leave me alone. Haven't I suffered enough?" He stumbled again, his foot catching hard this time. And when he bumped into me, he barely missed being knocked down. That's when he realized I was something else. He looked at me in disbelief, but it quickly turned to rage. He lunged forward, grabbing me and shaking me as I tried to articulate something, anything, that would make him stop. He was hurting me, my head snapping back and forth as he shook, and I couldn't make a sound as he tried to shake me to death. You aren't one of them. There were only 5 of them. There's always been 5 of them. Why are you here? Why are you tormenting? Why are you... Something hit him in the face and he fell back in the grass, clutching at his cheek. Something wet, sticky, rolled down his neck. And I had a moment of fear as I wondered if it might be his eye. It wasn't. I saw that when he pulled his hand away. When the second one hit him, I saw it was an egg, as a third and a fourth joined in. "Get off him, you killer! Haven't you killed enough kids already?" I turned to see 3 kids on the opposite sidewalk. A carton of eggs between their feet and their hands already throwing more. The man scuttled backwards, shielding his face as he went, and disappeared into the grass as more eggs came pelting in. I heard the crunch of old weeds. It was followed by the slam of a door. And when I heard sneakers coming towards me, I put a hand up in case the eggs came flying my way. "You okay, kid?" I looked up to find a Power Ranger, the red one, extending his hand to help me up. That was Ryan, someone who'd later become my best friend over the next few days. "Yeah," I said, accepting the hand up. I looked over to where the other ghosts had been, but they were all gone. I suppose they'd gotten what they came for. "Oh, let me help you with that," he said, taking the sheet off and folding it a little as he draped it around me. After a few minutes of fussing with it, his friends came over to help. He had made a halfway decent toga out of it. His friends, soon to be my friends too, Rob and Patrick, agreed that it looked a lot better, though it clashed with their Power Ranger costumes badly. "Hey, you're the kid that just moved in on Hamby, right?" Ryan asked. "I'm Ryan, it's Patrick, and Robert. Just Rob," he insisted as he waved. They invited me to come with them, chucking another dozen or so eggs at the house that the man had scuttled back into. They didn't seem angry about it. They did it like it was an expected chore and almost seemed bored. They left the trash in the yard before picking up their bikes and walking back the way I'd come towards the happy sounds of our active street. "Why'd you guys egg his house anyway?" I asked. The 4 of us passing more kids on their way with eggs. "Did he do something to you?" I expected them to laugh or maybe act proud of what they'd done, but they just shrugged. It was a look I sometimes saw on people who were voting or going about volunteer work. Bored, but certain of their actions. And it was something that was hard to make sense of at the age of 10. "We egg his house every year. Everyone does. No one likes Horace Jenkins, but especially not on Halloween." "Why?" I asked, still confused. "The same reason I bet no one's giving you candy. No one wears ghost costumes, after what he did." "But what did he do?" I said, starting to get aggravated. Ryan turned like he was going to yell at me for being stupid, but seemed to remember I was new. So it was probably about 15 years ago, way before we were born. Horace Jenkins was the owner of some company, something that was doing well around here, but it didn't make people like him. Horace Jenkins, from what my dad says, was a mean man. He didn't treat people right. He was rude, he didn't support the community, but he was rich, so people let him stay. One Halloween night about 15 years ago, he was coming home drunk from a party, one that he'd been with a rich friend of his, and, he ran over 5 kids. One's in ghost costumes. He was all over the news. People knew he did it, but he got some hotshot lawyer who got him out without jail time. They claimed the kids had been running across the road, they claimed Horace hadn't actually been drunk, and they cast a lot of doubt and made a lot of deals. At least, that's what Dad says. Afterward, Horace tried to pay the families off, but they wouldn't take the money. No one in town would take his money. No one would work for his company. He lost all of it when his wife left him. She took his house, his cars, his kids, and he was left with that little house, and I guess not much else. The people here let him live in the house, but they let him know that we haven't forgotten. After the accident, it was considered kind of disrespectful to wear ghost costumes anymore, and that's why no one does it. They didn't know you were the new kid on the block, they just thought you were being mean. And, now you know better. Hey, Caesar? Caesar became my nickname after that, and my makeshift toga got me a lot of candy before the streetlights went out. I spent some time afterward trading candy with my new friends and promising to see him at school the next day. I still live in that town some 20 years later, and it's still considered a tradition to go egg Horace Jenkins' house. Yeah, he's still alive. An old codger of 79. And I've realized the town keeps him around as a warning. Working for the bank, come to find that Horace Jenkins has no money, no assets, and not a penny to his name. But his taxes are paid. His power and water bills are paid. Food's left on his doorstep once a week to sustain him. I mean, it's nothing gourmet. Basics are good enough for him. But it keeps him alive and living in a house that's slowly rotting around him. Once a year, someone spray paints killer on the garage door. And once a year, we all throw eggs and dirt clods at his house to remind him that he tried to cheat his way out of 5 lives. The law may have exonerated him, but the town does not forget, and it doesn't forgive. Sometimes when my friends and I throw our eggs at that sagging wreck, I think I see 5 little ghosts on the sidewalk staring at the house. The house of the man who murdered him. Sometimes while I throw my eggs at the temple of hatred, I wish Horace Jenkins would live 1,000 years. And then I remember. Those ghost kids will be waiting for him. And that brings me some comfort. Hey there kids, it's me, MrCreepyPasta, and I just wanted to tell you thank you so much for watching tonight's video, or by listening to tonight's episode of the podcast. I know I haven't had as many updates as I would like to have on the channel lately, and things just kind of get really hard with shit that's happening in my family. But hey, I wanted to say thank you so much for being around, thank you so much for still supporting me and for coming back to listen to new stories. If you guys want to get updates anytime that I do upload, then please go ahead and hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. Or if you're listening over a podcast, I think it's still a subscribe button or a follow button or whatever happened. Those happen to be. As always, I want to give a very big thank you to everybody out there on patreon.com/MrCreepyPasta. A very, very big thank you to everybody there, and to especially Jordan Humble, Diana Kraus, King Crab, Calcifer420, Veronica Lynn Lopez, Marlon Chavez, Azazel66603, Ethan Leon, Polaris Prospect X, Blake Rattler, Viceroy Scorn, Samara Lynn, Disciple, SullyMan, Brandon Mendoza, BrimstonePandemonium, Caltuna, William Wellington, Scruffy the Janitor, Brenna LaQueda, Canizales, Smiley the Psychotic, Dante Kinkade, SimbasBloodyMojo, CursepoxPrimarch, M, Jenna's Pet, Clonable, Kearns, Mike, himbojerry, CrusaderChocobo, Remember the Sun, Estebean, Hour Minute Second Time, Seclude, Salty Surprise, Red Shadowcat, Turtleman, Mr. Marcus Blitz, Voice of Sand, Thicomel, Melted Lake, Tully Sue, Croconut 509, Stricken, Freddy Krueger, Hades Nephew, Tommy Walters, Acid System, Sky Harbor, Nico Kyle, Tristan Pelton, Ball Arms the Rat, The Ginger Bros, Daniel Polson, and Corey Kinchin. To all of you guys there, everybody who's down in the description, and everybody who can just give $1, I want to say thank you to you guys. And if you would like to join this list in the description, head over to patreon.com/MrCreepy. And if you would like to join this list in the description, sweet dreams.